Their history is a flip of a credit, cruel but kind, fearful but hopeful, warring but peaceful. Humanity, jewel of purpose and jewel of effect. Their histories inspire horror and hope in the same breath. General La Enthal in Memoirs of Terror. General La Enthal strode into his stateroom aboard the ambassadorial vessel High Hope. He had a brooding expression by his species standards, but tried to give off an air of calm resignation to his task. His staff could read his mood, though. They had been under his command for years now. He had been decided to open diplomatic relations with a new species, called humanity, but his true purpose was to determine the threat that this species could pose to the allied Fraxian systems. "Good morning, everyone," the general said flatly. "I hope that we are all as excited for today's events as much as our counterparts are." There were some dry chuckles at the joke. These human diplomats could not hide their obvious enthusiasm at meeting their first sapient beings beyond our world. This excitement bordered on the fanatic joy that was witnessed during the Florian mating season. "I know that we have our reserves about this species, since it is dealing with us in the form of nation-states, but we must have sympathy and patience for these creatures that stand so divided." The newest member of Gal's staff quickly stood up and spoke with slight anxiety. "Sir, as you know, I have just arrived at the scene, so I am not as informed on these humans. How many nation-states are they divided in?" Gal quickly looked at his chief of staff and gave a nod. Mithril stood and nodded back. "Since you are new, the general will forgive you, but next time you come into a staff meeting, please make sure you have read the material." These words were said with a slight reprimand, but it was already known to the staff that the green diplomat, straight out of her training, was not given the material to determine whether she would ask for information if she did not have it. She had passed. "From what is known," Mithril continued, "the humans are in a very divided state. It's a miracle they even reached FDL capability with the strange organizations of their planet. Their world is quite large for housing sapient life, though splitting it into a little over 200 nations is certainly unprecedented among this level of development." This was not the first time that most of the staff had heard about the numerous nations of Earth, but it was still an amazing fact since most species in the galaxy that were tribal only split into a dozen nations at most. "Our counterparts, as the general called them, have been very excited indeed," stated Mithril. "They offered us their histories, as we asked." Everyone sat up interested at that point. Most sapient species in the galaxy loved learning the things of old. They would be deemed the human word, historian. The general quickly asked a question that was immediately urgent. "What of their military histories?" Mithril hesitated in his response. The brief moment filled with anticipation for his answer, because he had a look of concern, and quickly turned to disgust when he said, "The humans, as we know, are very tribal. This sense of tribalism has led to conflict throughout their history that has culminated in what is known as world wars. They have waged more war than even the Cornites." There was a brief moment of silence, until General Gal asked, "What planets took part in these world wars? I see no evidence of habitation beyond Earth in this system." The question struck everyone at once with the understanding of the confusion of the word world wars. If it was possible, Mithril looked even more disgusted and disturbed than summarizing the disposition of the human military histories. "Sir, these world wars were a series of conflicts that involved the nations that controlled most of the economic and military power on their world. They took place in the early part of their 20th century. To summarize the results of the conflicts, about 86 million humans perished, with room for variance based on historical interpretation." After Mithril had finished speaking, the new member of General Gal's staff stated in a harsh whisper, "That cannot be possible. These histories must be wrong, or the humans must not be sapient." The latter part was so idiotic, since only sapient races could possess FDL, but the sentiment was understood by the group. Mithril calmly and simply stated, "There is nothing wrong with these histories. There is nothing to contradict them, and the humans do not hide this about themselves." The room was filled with a mute horror as everyone absorbed these facts. Everyone felt the pressure in the room as the reality of these human histories sank in. It even appeared that the room was darker than when they had all walked in, if that was possible. Finally, General Gal stammered a question that they were all thinking. How can they do this to themselves? How can they live with such brutality of existence? Why would they do such a thing? This came from a man who had fought in the Fralak Wars, with death on both sides reaching 10 million before the war was over. The average galactic wars would not exceed 1 million deaths, because most sapiens were not willing to spend that many lives and resources to win. I do not know, Mithril stated, with a wiry smile full of sympathy. But I do understand that the humans put the simple answer to ideological differences, and an inevitability of conflict. The only reason they do not continue with these large-scale conflicts is that they have atomics pointed at each other that are attached to rudimentary rockets. That sent another wave of shock through the room. Atomics were not the most powerful weapons in the universe, but they were certainly up there. General Gao could not fathom how a species would be willing to destroy its own civilization for the sake of victory. Before any more thoughts could be shared, a beeping went off on everyone's handhelds. This signaled the arrival of the human delegation. Everyone looked a bit nervous, and before anything else could be said, General Gao spoke with a tone of finality. If these humans are as cruel as their histories say, then they could be an even greater threat to the allied Fraxian systems than even the Fralak hive mind.